Alright, so I've seen many people share their initial thoughts on the new Mario Kart game, Mario Kart World. And it's fair to say that there have been mixed feelings about many different aspects of the game after we have seen some gameplay from Nintendo events. The footage we have does answer some questions we had about the game after we saw the trailers, but it has also naturally raised some concerns among the community that I would like to talk about today, as I'm not as worried about some of the topics as others seem to be. From what I've seen, the biggest problem people have had so far about the game itself is all the seemingly long and uneventful straightaway sections we have seen in Grand Prix and Knockout mode. The general consensus seems to be that these sections will be very boring to drive, which I can't necessarily disagree with without playing the game yet. The option to turn them off does mean that you won't be forced to go between the tracks all the time, which I imagine will be used a lot, but I do think that there are still positives to the intermissions, the main one being that they could make the game so much more accessible and enjoyable for new players. If you have little experience with Mario Kart games, then the option to have more simple track layouts will help ease you in, especially since the races will already be more chaotic given that there are now 24 players, so you'll want to be able to focus on your surroundings without making constant driver mistakes on somewhat complicated tracks. Now, we have seen that the intermissions are at least forced upon you when you play Knockout Tour, which makes complete sense, but it does mean that if they do turn out to be dull to drive, then the Knockout mode could end up being forgotten about after everyone has played the game for a week. But we have seen that there is more to the mechanics of the game than just driving and drifting that could make these sections more exciting. The rails and wall rides will be a big gimmick in this game, giving you more options than just to drive on the road, but they will probably just serve a similar purpose that things like boost panels and trick ramps do. The main technique that I think could be more impactful to the enjoyment of this mode at a more advanced level of gameplay is the ground tricking. If this is faster than just driving straight, which it should be, then it will give you more to think about as you will have to balance out using this technique and dealing with the other 23 players on the track. Also, since we haven't played the game properly yet, there will likely be techniques we don't know about on top of what we have already seen that could add to the enjoyment of the mode. Of course, the notion that these sections will get dull pretty quickly could easily turn out to be true, but I do think that they could be made better when playing 200cc, since going faster will make these sections feel shorter and there will be less time between each knockout gate. Wait, there is 200cc, right? Okay, so some people are a bit worried that 200cc might not be in the game since it hasn't yet been shown anywhere, and of course this would not be ideal for someone like me. But I think the fact that in the Nintendo Treehouse videos there are trophies next to the 50cc and 100cc modes, but not 150cc, implies heavily that you will unlock something when you have completed all three, which would naturally be 200cc. This is also the case on the cup selection screen, where all but one of them have been completed to not show the special cup being unlocked, which contains Rainbow Road. By the way, I know that mirror mode also isn't there, so technically that could be what is unlocked instead, but I just simply doubt that would be the case because it makes no sense to mirror the entire world at the cost of not having 200cc in the game when a lot of the roads are so wide and will fit 200cc perfectly, but maybe that is just me being blinded by hope. The next thing I want to talk about is the items. One of the main things I've seen people concerned about with the items is the auto-trailing feature, taking away your control of how you use the items you pull, and of course meaning that there are more items to avoid at all times. To be honest, I do share the same concerns, but I am optimistic that it won't be as bad as people are picturing if the way you get hit by trails works how it's intended. As you all know, in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, if you hit someone on your screen with a trailing item, then 99% of the time the person you hit will be slowed down, even if they are not close to the item on their screen. This is called a lag trail, and it is one of the biggest problems people have had with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Online. But it seems that in this game, the opposite is true, whereby if you see someone trailing an item like a banana, as long as you don't go close enough to it on your screen, you will not get hit out, even if it looks like you got hit on the trailer screen. This does mean, however, that auto-trailing can force you to lose your item without actually trying to hit anyone, which isn't ideal, but we'll just have to wait and see how it is when the game comes out. I must add that it seems like other players can only see items you are holding behind you if they can interact with it whilst it's being trailed. For example, in this clip, the Hammer Bro has a super horn, but it doesn't show on the Peach's screen. But when he trails a red shell or a mushroom, it does show on the Peach's screen. Now I like the idea to bring back hidden items like it was in Mario Kart Wii, but it does mean that you can narrow down what items someone near you could have if they are not trailing anything after going through an item box. How this will affect strategy, I don't know, but I just thought I'd mention it as it is an interesting detail. Now on the topic of how trailing works, let's talk about that one clip you have all seen from the Nintendo Treehouse videos. So, the coin coffer runs into the green shell, gets hit by it, then the green shell is no longer there, which is what should happen. However, on the Baby Daisy screen, the green shell is still being trailed despite coin coffer getting hit by it, and it is then thrown to hit another racer, with the green shell even appearing again on the coin coffer screen. So, this means that if the Baby Daisy threw the green shell backwards, the coin coffer could have been hit by the exact same green shell twice. This is of course not ideal because, well, a shell is supposed to break once it's hit someone. We also don't know what this would look like from a player's perspective who wasn't involved in the interaction at all. Would the green shell have been invisible to them too? It wouldn't be great if the items we know are supposed to be visible on everyone's screens as a trail item can also now be hidden only because of the lag. We've already seen this happen when only 2 humans are in the same race, so it isn't unrealistic to think that this could happen multiple times per race when playing with 24 different players from around the world. So yes, I do think that this should be fixed before the full game is released, because I can see it becoming very frustrating when playing online. If it's only the person who got hit that the trail item disappears for, then it isn't the end of the world, as getting hit twice would still be unlikely and the punishment wouldn't be catastrophic in this game, but it still shouldn't really be a thing. By the way, I think that items being less punishing in general is something to look forward to, as it makes getting hit feel less race ending and makes your driving ability even more important to win races. The main item that has been nerfed significantly is the shock, because even when you're in first, you don't stay small for very long, and it only affects people who are in front of the shock user. It's clear that Nintendo are trying to make bagging much less effective, and I'm perfectly fine with that change, as front running is always more enjoyable to me in general. Another thing to note is that there could be 2 new items you can pull in first that can dodge the blue shell. One being the food costume changing item that gives a mushroom boost, and the other being the feather item, which I think will allow you to dodge the blue shell, but I'm not certain. Either way, even if there is only the food item, one more blue shell dodging item being in first place as item roulette helps make being in first place throughout each race more valuable, which is nice. So yeah, I like the overall changes being made to the items from what we can tell, but I can't be certain yet without knowing what the item distribution is, because who knows, I could end up pulling a blooper in 17th place on my first race. Now I have already mentioned some of the new mechanics in this game, but I haven't talked about some of the most obvious changes, the vehicle changing for different sections of tracks and the removal of customizable car parts. The latter, from what I can tell, seems to have been seen as a positive change, with the vehicles looking more natural with allocated wheels, and it makes the menus less intrusive when trying to get a race going. I especially like the change made to gliding, as the wings on the side of the car just look much nicer and less distracting than the gliders in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. The main complaint I've seen with the vehicle changes is to do with the fact that we now ride on top of water instead of going underwater. Now this change itself isn't the problem I've seen people have, it is instead how it affects the functionality of the water themed retro tracks, with Wario Shipyard being the main example. I've seen people say that not going underwater on tracks like this ruin what the track is supposed to be about, which I completely understand. I don't have any strong opinions on Wario Shipyard, so I'm not too bothered about a significant change to how it plays, but there is also no denying that it does seem to be completely redesigned to make it work with the new mechanics. All I can say is that hopefully riding on top of the water is very fun to do, so that people won't be too fussed about the changes after they've experienced the tracks, and to be fair, from what I can tell, tricking off the waves does look pretty fun. Okay, so there are a couple more things that I want to mention to end the video. The first one being that the nature of this game opens up the possibility for so much future DLC. We're starting out with 32 tracks and 8 cups like normal, all of which fit onto this world map. The whole of which looks incredible, and I'm sure that in a few years people will still be enjoying these tracks. However, since Nintendo have seen such recent success with Mario Kart DLC, I'm sure that they will look to add new tracks to this game as well in the future, which they could do by adding new islands around the map. Driving on top of water means that travelling to these islands would be very simple, and Nintendo can be very creative with the theme of each island, whether they bring back old tracks or entirely new ones. An example of this could be to bring back Woohoo Island, as you get 2 tracks in one. I also think that the island idea suits the Booster Course Pass style of DLC, because it would allow them to introduce the tracks gradually like they did with the wave system in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, just this time it would instead be adding 1 or 2 islands per wave. There is an alternative option they could go for DLC, which would be to just make another map entirely filled with another 32 tracks, but I think that the island idea just makes a bit more sense to me. But we don't have to think about that too much right now, that's something for a few years down the line. Okay, so I have been mainly positive in this video, but there is one small thing that I would like to say I really don't like the look of, which is the point scoring system. The fact that you can gain a position and not gain a point just doesn't feel right. It makes for situations where you simply can't gain any points near the end of a race even if there are multiple people to overtake. Let's say you're on the final 5 seconds of a race and you find yourself in 15th place. To gain any more points, you would have to overtake 3 separate people in front of you. Even if you managed to throw a bomb forward or something and hit 13th and 14th, it still wouldn't be enough unless someone in a position above also gets taken out, which is likely to be out of your control. So what you'll probably want to do instead is just stop anyone overtaking you, as it is much more likely you will lose a point than gain one. This just isn't the way it should be in my opinion. Gaining a spot in the race should give you a reward no matter what, but maybe my mind will change once the game comes out. Other than that detail, there's nothing else in this game that I don't like the look of really, which shows how optimistic I am that this game is going to be unreal. Oh well, there might be one more thing.